Today, thousands of people pay for the privilege of listening to Jordan Belfort. He tours the globe as a celebrated motivational speaker, teaching crowds about the intersection of high-stakes sales and corporate ethics. But the face of this modern-day guru belongs to a convicted felon. This is the man who engineered a system to drain hundreds of millions of dollars from working-class Americans who could least afford to lose it. It raises a difficult question. How did a man use the same psychological tactics to orchestrate a massive financial crime and then successfully use those exact same tactics to sell that crime back to us as entertainment? This transition from the courtroom to the boardroom marks a pivot in his career. He stopped selling penny stocks and started selling his own notoriety, testing whether a good enough salesman can convince society to overlook his history. Belfort's trajectory began in Queens, driven by a simple rule. If a path didn't lead to immediate wealth, it wasn't worth taking. He walked out of dental school on his very first day because the dean told the class that dentistry was no longer a shortcut to getting rich. He turned to a door-to-door meat business next. He moved $100,000 of product a month, but the operation was a logistical disaster. Spoiled steaks and unpaid invoices eventually forced the company into bankruptcy. In the wreckage of that business, he realized that the product itself, whether it was frozen seafood or corporate equity, was irrelevant. The only thing that determined the payout was the salesman's ability to control the pitch. He brought that mindset to Wall Street just as the 1980s boom was peaking. When the Black Monday crash of 1987 silenced the trading floors, he was fired and pushed toward the fringes of the financial world. This chart highlights the opportunity he found in the pink sheets, unregulated penny stocks. While a standard broker earned a tiny fraction of a percent on a blue-chip trade, these obscure companies offered a commission that could swallow half of every dollar invested. Belfort didn't need a better stock. He needed a psychological loophole in an unregulated market that allowed him to maximize his personal take on every single call. He gave his firm the prestigious-sounding name Stratton Oakmont to project a legacy of stability. In reality, it was a high-pressure boiler room operating out of a Long Island strip mall. His strategy relied on targeting people Wall Street usually ignored, retirees and parents looking for a way to secure their future, and selling them hope wrapped in a sense of manufactured urgency. This graph shows the pump. Brokers bought massive blocks of cheap shares, flooding the market with buy orders to create an artificial surge. Once peaked, insiders dumped their shares for profit. The stock instantly collapsed, leaving retail investors holding worthless paper. To scale this, Belfort hired unqualified recruits and trained them in his straight-line persuasion method. He built an environment where brokers bulldozed objections, and those who failed to close were publicly humiliated and replaced within hours. This system transformed Stratton Oakmont into a psychological pressure cooker, fueled by a relentless cycle of artificial excitement and the looming threat of being cast out if the numbers dropped. As the money poured in, the office culture grew increasingly chaotic. Extreme drug use and extravagant rewards became tools to maintain the high-frequency energy required to keep the scam moving. The fraud eventually required a complex web of shell companies and offshore accounts. Millions in cash were physically smuggled across borders, sometimes sewn into clothing, to keep the profits out of the reach of U.S. regulators. Agent Gregory Coleman of the FBI began connecting the dots. He tracked suspicious cash withdrawals and began flipping brokers who were tired of the chaos or burned by unpaid bonuses. The definitive blow came in 1996. During an FBI raid on the firm, agents traced a $2 million wire transfer to Switzerland that Belfort had sent in defiance of direct orders, providing the paper trail needed to sink the empire. Faced with decades in prison, Belfort made one final sale. He wore a wire. He traded the secrets of his most loyal employees and friends to the government in exchange for a lighter sentence. The loyalty he had demanded from his staff vanished the moment his own freedom was on the line. In the end, his most ruthless pitch was the one that sacrificed his partners to secure his own exit. Belfort served only 22 months in a minimum security facility. While his victims were left with drained retirement accounts and mortgage debt, he spent his time lifting weights and playing tennis. While in prison, he met comedian Tommy Chong, who convinced him that his story of excess and fraud was a commercial goldmine. Belfort began writing, documenting his crimes with a focus on the spectacle rather than the fallout. His memoir became a global blockbuster, turning his history of financial predation into a celebrated piece of pop culture. The very man who lied to investors was now being applauded by audiences around the world. The court ordered him to pay $110 million back to the families he ruined. To this day, only a small fraction has been paid, with the rest shielded by legal loopholes and offshore trusts. Today, he has fully leaned into his persona as the Wolf. He uses his past as a credential, selling sales coaching and motivational speeches to the next generation of aspiring hustlers. Belfort's career suggests that if you are a persuasive enough salesman, a crime isn't necessarily an end. It's just the opening act for a much larger, more profitable performance.